That's question number 3. Question number 4 is on the defensive side of the ball. Is Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley, who's his right-hand man, going to be effective at defensive coordinator? And I think the answer to this one is yes, because I think the players, Sorensen is their hand-picked guy. Um, when you get your hand-picked coordinator, you better play ball and you better bring energy and you better play with your hair on fire. And I think guys will play hard. I also kind of like what the look of this young secondary looks like. There's great depth in this young secondary. I mean, I've got a couple questions about the defense, but I think overall, I think Sorensen has a presence. I think he has a trust of the players. I think Staley clearly is another guy that the players really believe in. I think it's going to work out. I think, last year it was a tough thing to ask Steve Wilkes to, run somebody else's defense. Now Sorensen's been in house, and he's, the continuity and the scheme is there. He knows the players. There's a trust in him. Sometimes the bigger name coach is not always the right guy. Steve Wilkes has a much bigger reputation, obviously, than Nick Sorensen, but I think Sorensen with Brandon Staley there, I think is going to be a nice little mix. Now, part of it is they're loaded with all kinds of young talent in the secondary, and they redid their defensive line, and they still have a lot of good linebackers, so the talent is there. But I think Sorensen seems like a really bright guy. I like the fact that there's scheme, cohesiveness and continuity. I think they like their scheme, and I like their scheme. I like the wide nine. I like a 5-2 front, which is what they feature most of the time. They play a lot of zone, but as they get better defensive backs, I think they'll play more man in time. But if the question is Sorensen and Staley going to be effective as a defensive coordinator, combo, I think they're going to be more effective than what Wilkes was a year ago. That's how I would term it. The fifth question is, do the 49ers have enough defensive end depth? And I think the answer to this is clearly no. You have Nick Bosa, you have Leonard Floyd, you have Yatir Gross-Matos. Gross-Matos has looked pretty good, to be honest. I mean, he's a huge guy who's really starting to come into his own as a football player. Robert Beal has put on about 12 to 15 pounds of good weight, and he's closer to 260, and he's moving incredibly well out there. But they haven't played any games except for one, and they haven't really incurred any injuries. And they still, they're going to go with 5 defensive ends. And right now, who's that 5th defensive end? I mean, it's Jonathan Garvin. And I just don't know. They missed Drake Jackson, and I think the 49ers are going to be in the market for a defensive lineman at the cut down. And we'll go through a couple names here in a minute. But I would say absolutely they do not have enough defensive end depth specifically. I think that's the spot where you really got to look around at the cut down to see who gets cut and what their price tag is and what the Niners need to do to acquire them, because I think they definitely could use another defensive end or two. Question 6 is Devondre Campbell. Is he going to be an effective replacement for Dre Greenlaw? And I would say my guess on this one is no. This is a little bit of a guess, right? Campbell made a couple nice plays today against the run, but you're trying to step in for Dre Greenlaw, who is just so awesome against the run. And I just don't see that agility or that motor or that ability to break down in space against even the most athletic weapons. I just don't see a Greenlaw type player. Now, I love what I'm seeing from D. Winters. Love what I see from Tatum Bethune, even though he's a step slow. Really love what I see from Jalen Graham. And Curtis Robinson in this camp is coming of age. I mean, Curtis Robinson is really looking good. Flanagan Fowles is playing fast. So I'm not really a believer in Devondre Campbell. He's going to have to win me over. Right now, to me, he looks like a guy who can be picked on in coverage and take some bad steps and doesn't look overly athletic in space breaking down trying to make tackles. So I would say he cannot adequately replace Dre Greenlaw, and they'll have to look at one of those other guys. That would be my guess there. Question 7 is, can George Odom hold down the free safety spot with Talanoa Hufanga's out? Now, Talanoa Hufanga's, got the coming off the ACL. He was hoping to be back week 1. They were saying he might come back to practice as soon as, late this week. If the Niners had the joint practices with the Saints, there was a lot of speculation that, Huff would have been out there. I'll say this. I mean, one, I would take my time with Huff. It's a long year. It's a long year. Get him healthy. Get him healthy before you put him out there. That's first and foremost. But number 2, the same reason, the next reason to be patient is George Odom is playing his ass off. George Odom looks great. George Odom is a tremendous special teamer. He's an all-pro special teamer. That's why he's here. They made a sizable investment in special teams by signing Odom. George Odom in this camp has looked like a very seasoned free safety. He's breaking on the football. He's playing on time. He's delivering big hits. He's making the right, he's in the right areas in the run fits. His timing in the pass game looks far better than anything I've ever seen. So George Odom looks dramatically improved. He knows this defense. He looks like he can play free safety. So if you had said that to me at the beginning of camp, I would have said no. George is a special teamer, strictly. But watching him in this camp, I'm pretty sure George Odom can play free safety. Now they also have Malik Mustafa and Jalen Mahoney, and they've got other guys they can lean on. And obviously Jair Brown is a tremendous player. But George Odom can play free safety until Hufanga's ready to go. If they want to go with Odom, they can go with Odom. They don't have to go with a Mustafa rookie. They don't have to go with Mahoney, who's also a rookie. They can go with the veteran George Odom, and he can stand up and play. So that is exciting, how well George Odom has played safety in this camp and thus far in the preseason. And that was question 7. Question 8. Who are the 49ers going to go with 6 corners? Who are their 6 best corners? Well, the 4 locks to make the roster are Mooney Ward, Diamador Lenore, Renardo Green, who is just their second-round pick. You're not going to cut your second-round pick, and he's played great. And Isaac Yiadom, who was signed over in the offseason coming off a phenomenal year with the Saints. So those 4 guys are on the roster for sure, unless there's injuries. So you're really looking for 2 more between Darrell Luter, who looks phenomenal, Sam Womack, who also looks really, really good, Rock Ya-Sin, who's the veteran who's been is healthy and played great in this camp, Ambry Thomas, who's dinged up right now, but he once upon a time was a 3rd-round pick, and Chase Lucas, who's very aggressive on the practice field and is a very stellar special teams player. So you have 5 good candidates going for maybe 2 spots. And I'd probably go Luter and Womack and go with the youth. But Ambry Thomas, maybe you put him on the IR? I don't know. Maybe you put him on the PUP list to start the year. Rock Ya-Sin is going to be a very difficult guy to cut. He is a veteran corner. He knows how to play all the short and intermediate stuff. He's got perfect footwork and hand placement and all that stuff on all the the fade routes and all the stuff where you really need to be technically sound. He's a veteran, right? He's a veteran. He's a technically sound, starting caliber, NFL caliber corner who's had injuries in the past, but he's healthy and he's playing great. So this will probably solve itself via injury. But Mooney, Lenore, Renardo Green, Isaac Yiadom are your front 4. I'd go with Luter and Womack as 5 and 6. And then that means I'm cutting or doing something with Chase Lucas, Rock Ya-Sin, and Ambry Thomas. But somehow, some way, I think this will solve itself. I don't like cutting good corners. And Rock Ya-Sin, Ambry Thomas, Sam Womack, Luter, Yadam, Renardo, Lenore, Mooney. I mean, they're all good corners. They're all good corners. And I definitely don't like cutting good corners. That's question number 8. So I would say definitely the front 4, and then I'll go Luter and Womack. But I think ultimately an injury or two will probably thin the herd and decide that, make that decision an easier decision.